Teasel Pop, Season 11, Episode 11. Business English gets a bad rap. It's often portrayed as stiff, textbook heavy, and, well, a bit dull. But today's guest is here to flip that idea on its head. Hi there, welcome to Teasel Pop, the mini podcast for busy teachers. I'm your host, Laura Wilkes, and in this episode, I'm joined by Nicholls, a business English teacher, multilingual learner, and the founder of Mega Language Coach. Meg shares how she co-creates lessons with her students that are flexible, relevant, and engaging. From boardroom vocabulary to maternity leave conversations, Meg opens the door into her classes and invites us to reimagine what modern-day business English can really look like. So, without further delay, let's join the conversation where I asked Meg to share what inspires her about teaching business English.
I think one of the exciting things is that every day is different and no two lessons are the same. I think there's this misconception that business is boring and we're going to get the textbooks out and blow away the dust and we're going to be talking about stocks and shares. And honestly, I've never had a lesson like that. I love the variety and I love the different students. I think my business English lessons, they tend to focus really on the relevant vocabulary. We do a lot of role play for scenarios that they're actually going to use. I definitely tend to stay away from learning vocabulary lists just for the sake of it. Don't see much point in that. So yeah, we're looking at boardroom meetings. We're looking at discussions with HR. We're looking at how to ask for promotions or pay raises or anything that they're going to use in an actual business context, right? And then lots of my students come to me and they need presentation prep. Maybe they have something coming up specifically, or maybe just general presentation skills. We do a lot of CV writing and interview prep for international roles. And just really this practical learning to be able to use the English in a business context.
Can I ask, when your students approach you, what's the main reasons that they come to you seeking business English classes? Because it sounds like, if I've understood this correctly, your students are probably already in their careers, they're doing the thing that they do, and they're looking to, is it add English or develop their English for whatever reason?
Yeah, most of my students are from Europe, so they already have basic English and normally another third or fourth language as well, but they're at a level that they would like to improve. So this is normally for a promotion or to progress to management. And especially in the international roles, they need the English to be able to communicate among the European countries.
Yeah, that's really interesting that they've got this kind of opportunity that they see where developing their language skills could help them move forward in their careers. When you were describing your teaching scenarios and how you've got obviously the vocabulary and grammar that goes with the scenarios I think are very relatable no matter what the context is. Like you mentioned, having a conversation with HR, talking about promotions, talking about your pay. Those settings are quite transferable across industries, but what's not so transferable are those specific vocabulary and lexical chunks that are tailored to that particular context and that particular role that person's working in. And I wonder how you go about preparing for that, because I remember when I taught this student who worked in the denim industry and just how little I knew about the denim industry and how I had to actually put in a lot of prep work before I met and worked with that student, that perhaps it wouldn't have been sustainable long term had I used that and scaled that as a business model. So I wonder, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Laura. I have students from so many different industries from all over the world, and I actually love that about my job. So I have engineers, I have people in healthcare, I have people that are not sitting in the office doing the 9 to 5, but they still need the English for their business, whatever that might be. So I really kind of encourage that we go on a learning journey together. And a lot of the first few sessions, I'm asking them to explain their role, to explain their tasks and their responsibilities to me in English, because that's a great opportunity for them to learn the vocabulary. I can correct them, and also they can educate me on what they do and where the gaps are. And I think that's a great way that we can kind of discover it together. And be able to explain their industry in simple terms for anybody, because they might be working with somebody that's not in their industry, that's not already an expert. A lot of it is being flexible to their needs and not doing hours of preparation. Often their needs are spontaneous and we don't know what they're going to need in advance. So, for example, I had a student that was excitingly telling me that she's going on maternity leave. But then that was a situation that we hadn't prepared for. So then we reacted to that and learned all the relevant vocabulary to be able to have those conversations with HR, for example.
You know, I wish we had this conversation when I was teaching and preparing for that particular student I just mentioned earlier, because I can see how this model of flexibility, it's almost like collaborative learning, isn't it? Where you respect the expertise that the adult learner in this case is bringing to the space. And that's how you kind of have this learning together that you mentioned, rather than putting the pressure and expectation all on you as a teacher, which is just not, we would I think teachers are pretty brilliant, but we're not superhumans, right? We can't be expected to know everything, but we can help people work towards the goals based on what they need in that moment in time.
Yeah, absolutely. I see it like two experts coming together. I've got the English grammar and I can talk to them about the conditional tenses, and they're definitely experts in their field, which I would never pretend to be. So together, the collaboration is that we can help them achieve their goals and learn from each other.
I wonder how your students respond to this approach, because this may be very different from their previous learning experience. And I wonder if this is resonating with you, where you have students who may be coming to you, having taken a break from language learning for a while, and may have had experiences that are very different, or maybe more formalized, much more top down, I would say, in terms of the way the educator would have approached the learning, maybe in a lecture hall example in a university scenario. And then they're coming to you and it's this co-learning scenario, two experts coming together to help achieve a particular language learning goal. How do you kind of convey that to students, and how do they react?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I myself, I've come from a language learning background, with the textbooks and learning the 30 words a week. And it's not ideal for me. And I want to kind of translate that to my students about what they learn and what they need in that situation. So I always ask them. And sometimes, unfortunately, they have had bad experiences. They remember that awful teacher or the grammar that they hated. And so I try and take that and make it into something positive and say, okay, what do you need instead? Unfortunately, sometimes they don't always know. So I kind of compare it to like the doctor prescribing medicine. Sometimes they have to navigate this discomfort of the unfamiliar and not knowing what they need. And sometimes I might go, okay, let's try this. And they're a little bit hesitant at first, but eventually we find a way that works. And just kind of encouraging that curiosity and that open-mindedness has been really important to me. It's about having a conversation more than the technical details. I'm not educating them how to do their job. I'm educating them how to speak about their job in another language. So yeah, I really want to bring the joy to my lessons in a way that they maybe haven't had previously.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear about your own experience as a language learner as well, because I know you speak multiple languages, and how you had to go through the experience of learning long lists. I did too as well when I was learning French, and you can probably tell how much French I actually speak and how successful that was for me. But yeah, it's just so strange, isn't it, that these are the models that we kind of had to, or often our generation and older generations had to experience, that don't really work in a communicative scenario, or aren't as successful for the majority of students. But it sounds like you found a way to persevere and you made it work for you, whereas for me it didn't work.
I'm sure it would all come back if you needed it.
It's surprisingly, actually, yeah, my listening reading's okay, but it's just the speaking, isn't it, that actual productive skills is where it's really, really challenging. But yeah, but this is fantastic that you kind of have this trial and error approach with your students. So you bring them on board on what is very much a journey of discovery to find what works for them. And that's a conversation that starts at the very beginning. And it sounds like it continues throughout as you kind of refine and fine tweak lessons to find that rhythm for them, which is absolutely brilliant. It's all about finding what they need, finding what works, and then moving forward with that and helping them recognize the progress that they're making, I find.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the flexibility really serves me well. And I think they enjoy it as well, because maybe it's a Friday afternoon and they've scheduled a lesson after they finish work and they don't want to do vocabulary, or they don't want to do the grammar. They just want to have a conversation about their week. And that's also a really valuable skill, which is often underestimated. Maybe they can speak in a boardroom and they can do the presentation for hundreds of guests, but then somebody asks them about their weekend in the elevator and then they freeze. So I really want to get the real life skills as well, and what they need in that lesson maybe is not what I've planned, but it's what that they want and what they're going to benefit most from.
You also mentioned that you're acknowledging the, what would you say, the bandwidth that the person's bringing to that point in time. If they've had an absolutely exhausting week and they just want to actually have a more informal, relaxed, fun conversation because it's been really stressful and they just can't focus in talking about something that's maybe heavily work related that was originally going to be on the agenda for that lesson. I think that's a really good thing of kind of acknowledging where they're at and where they're feeling, and being flexible and just being like, okay, no, we'll do small talk today and we'll have some fun and we'll relax, because it doesn't make sense to do what was originally planned or what we thought we were going to be doing today. I think that's brilliant. I can definitely relate to that as a German learner. Or when you've had a really busy week and you go to like German class and then we have something like really serious and like heavy grammar lesson and it goes in one ear and it goes out the other. I'm just like, it's just not sticking. It's not sticking at all. So I just would love for an example of a student you worked with recently. Earlier you gave us a window into your world of like just the different industries and the different approaches you're using, with that element of flexibility obviously being key in all your kind of lessons and in talking to your students at the very start and throughout. So I wonder if we could explore this a bit further, and could you give us an insight into a student you've worked with recently and the impact working with them has had on their English use and their career?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm lucky enough that I get to see the progression, and I really enjoy that part, that it's not just one lesson and done. I get to see them developing and changing over the time we work together. I've recently started working with a client in one of the European institutions, which has been really exciting and eye-opening for me. She wanted to sound more confident with international colleagues. And like I said, she's already got a couple of languages. So this is just strengthening and making the English as professional as possible. And we talked a lot about different alternative realities for the EU, especially how different international politics is playing out and what could happen. So we were practicing the conditional without her knowing it, and like the grammar rules, which might not have been the same if I'd have kind of set it out in black and white and said, okay, this is rule one. But because it was relevant to the job and the areas that she's discussing, it was actually really enjoyable. And we had these kind of controversial debates and brought the news into it. It's just about like expanding the exposure to the language and the way that we can use it in the job.
I imagine that's really powerful as well for the learner, because not only is it relevant to what's happening in their job, it's also a lot of media about it happening that they can engage in the multiple languages that they speak, as you mentioned. So it's kind of bringing what's trending in the news as well to the classroom, which is obviously relevant to the students' day to day as well. I am really inspired by this, Megan, and I bet our listeners will be too, because you've just painted a picture of what business English could be like. That's very different from my own experiences. And I'm sure listeners are going to be inspired as well in thinking about like how they prepare and what business classes could look like for them. I wonder, as a parting gift, is there anything you'd like to share with listeners that they could take away and try out this week?
Yeah, I think just having fun with it. Business doesn't have to be boring, and I'm really here to kind of break that stereotype. I look forward to teaching my classes because my students look forward to learning, and I think the more you put into it, the more joy and enthusiasm you have, like anything, the more you get back. This week, if you can try and help the students notice their development, I found that business students are often reticent to see that they're making progress and are often quite self-critical because they're in this kind of strict environment at work. So if you can encourage them to see how far they've come, I think that will have a really positive impact for their learning and also for you to see the progress they're making.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that kind of final parting gift for our listeners. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Super. So if you'd like to follow and learn more about Meg's work, then you can visit her website, megalanguagecoach.com, or you can go and connect with her on LinkedIn and Instagram. As always, I've included those links in the show notes so you can find those easily. Finally, you can support the work we do here at TESOL Pop by sharing today's episode to continue the conversation with your fellow teaching community, by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to the podcast to help us get discovered by more educators around the world, or by even buying us a coffee by going to ko-fi.com/TESOL Pop. Woohoo! I can't believe I got that in one take. That is very, very rare.
That was amazing.